Keep on making a way. Hey, Lord, I come to tell the Lord thank you. Can I say it one more time? Listen. When I was sick, you healed me. When I was hurt, you comfort me. When I didn't know what to do, Lord, I trusted you and you pulled me through. Hey, that's why I give you praise. Keep on making a way. Hey, Lord, I came to tell you, Lord, it ain't good. Hey, thank you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. I gotta tell him, thank him. He been so good to me. Thank you. I gotta tell him, thank you. Listen, he healed my body. I gotta tell him, thank you. He saved my soul. He made me whole, y'all. Yes, he did. Anybody owe him one? Put your hand on it. Listen, and tell the Lord much obliged. He didn't have to do it, but he did.
The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music.
You're about to listen to your morning devotions hosted by Pastor Colin Edghill of John Street Church of God from Georgetown, Guyana. A word to inspire, encourage, and uplift you. A word to motivate you to commit your life to the God who never fails. This is brought to you by Heavenly Eyes Beauty Salon, 10 Ben Street, Working Russ, Georgetown, Guyana, the second building going east. The phone number is 592-600-2832. That's 592-600-2832.
Praise the Lord. Good morning again to you. I pray this morning that you are blessed of the Lord and you are indeed highly favored. I thank God for all of you, and I pray that as we continue to share with you the songs and the thoughts that we are sharing with you, that indeed you will receive a blessing in your spirit today. The Apostle Paul, writing to young Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 4 verse 7, talk to him about contending for the faith, contending for the prize as he lives for Christ, as he recounts his own life. The first thing he said to Paul, to young Timothy, Paul said, you need to fight the good fight. He says, I have fought the good fight. What do I do to fight the good fight? How did Paul fight the good fight, you might ask? And I believe if we look at the scripture, we'll find when we read Ephesians that Paul fought the good fight by faith. He says, I pick up the shield of faith, which will enable you to withstand the fiery darts of the devil. I believe somewhere along the line he came across where Peter said to the church that we need to be alert and sober-minded. And so I believe the other thing that Paul did to fight the good fight, and something that we can do to fight the good fight, is to be alert and sober-minded. And we need to fight the fight of faith, the good fight of faith, that is, with purpose. Paul says, I use the analogy of a sportsman, whether it's a boxer or what have you, an Olympic athlete. He says, we prepare as you go to fight, as you go into the games, you prepare yourself and you beat your body into subjection because you want to do so, because you want to win a prize. And so Here Paul says, hey, listen, man, you gotta be purpose. And then, I believe too that we have to be laser like in our focus when it comes to um, fighting the good fight of faith. We must be laser like because there are all kinds of things to distract us, all kinds of things to cause us to look in another direction, to take our eyes off of Jesus, as Peter did when he was walking on the water. And then, we must have a firm stand. Paul says, having done all, stand with your loin girt about with truth. And so that is how I believe we would fight the good fight. And I think, too, one of the ways we can fight the good fight is by trusting in the Lord. Psalm 32, verses 6 and 7 says, trust in the Lord. Delight yourself in the Lord. Commit your ways to the Lord. And I believe once you do that, you will be able to fight the good fight of faith. I think the second part of the verse of 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7, Paul says, I have finished the race. Yeah, he says, I fought the good fight and I finished the race. Yeah, the race was tough, but I finished. Sometimes I felt abandoned, but I still finished the race because I know that at the end of the race that there was something that was in store for me that eyes did not see, ears could not heard, and neither had it entered the heart of man. And so he says, even though I know the end is near, he says, I keep on fighting because I believe God is able to keep me. He was in prison when he wrote to Timothy. He was about to go to Rome, and he knew he was not going to return, perhaps because of his age and all the other things that go along with him going to Rome. He knew that would have been the end of him. Somewhere along the line, perhaps the Lord had spoken to him, who knows. But he felt that he was not going to see any of the brethren again. So he wrote Timothy. He says, even when the times get tough, even when you feel abandoned, because he experienced how many people abandoned him. He says, I still finished my race. And the third thing he says, I was faithful to the end. He says, I fought the good fight. I finished the race and I was faithful. I kept the faith. I have kept the faith through despair, through thick and thin. Though I was in despair, he says, though I was in despair, he says, I kept the faith because I knew at the end of the day that there was a reward in verse 8. Paul says, I knew that there was a crown of righteousness stored up for me. So, even though there were challenges in the race, I kept on running. Even though there were difficulties and challenges, I kept on keeping on. I kept my eyes on the Lord. I kept my focus. I kept my mind. I kept my heart in tune to the Spirit of God. And I believe, brothers and sisters, sir, ma'am, I believe today, if you would allow the Lord to be Lord of your life, to sit upon the throne of your heart, and I believe you will have success. I believe you'll be able to fight the good fight of faith and win. That's the beauty about the faith. Paul fought the good fight and he won. He ran the race and he won because he knew that God was a promise-keeping God. He knew God was able to keep unto him what he had committed unto him. And so I want to encourage you. There's a prize, so contend for the prize. Contend for the prize by fighting the good fight of faith. Contend for the prize by running the race that has been set before you. Not your mother race, not your father race, not your brother race, not your sister race, not even the rat race, but your race, the race God has marked out for you. And if you do, you'll have a crown. So keep the faith until we meet again. God really bless you. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Good morning. Good morning again. How you doing? How you doing? How you doing, everyone? Thank you so much for joining us right here on the Praise Life Morning Show Devotion with Pastor Colin Edghill out of John Street, Georgetown, Guyana. And we were talking earlier about a little bit about Guyana in terms of the population, in terms of buildings, in terms of building structure and things like that. And to hear you talking about running your race, Guyana has its own race to run as well. One of the things I wanted to ask you before, what's the? I don't want to say. I'm going to use it anyways. What's the religious type settings in Guyana? Because I remember once upon a time, man, on a Sunday, it's church day. Everybody, going to church. What's it like now?
Well, Ghana is primarily consists of what they call three major religions. Ghana constitutionally is a secular state, and the constitution gives every individual freedom of religion. That means that you can adhere to any faith sect. Even if you decide to be an Obia man, it's fine with our constitution. That if your constitution is Obia and voodoo and black magic and all that stuff, you have a place. But primarily, Guyana is made up of the three major religions, which is Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam. And so anyone is free to join any one of those religions, practice the tenets of those religions without fear of being stigmatized or criminalized or disenfranchised or marginalized or ostracized or whatever size you want to use. And so it is made up, so you are either, I love to say, if you're not a Christian, you're either a Muslim or a Hindu. And you have, of course, predominantly the African adhere to Christianity predominantly, while the Indian population is a mixture of Hinduism and Islam. And then you have, the other folks, you have Rastafarianism and basically, and then we have other folks like the Unity people and so on and so forth. But those are marginal compared to Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity.
I know, excuse me, in some countries, you would find where there's a clash, especially hatred towards one another's belief system. Do we have that in Guyana?
Well, humans are humans, yes. So you will have that kind of scenario, but it is not. It is more covert than overt. If you know what I mean. It's not. It's not like Streaming Praise Radio logo on your shirt. It's subliminal, if you will.
Right.
It's there.
Right.
But like I was sharing with someone yesterday. As it relates to racism, there are Indian people who have issues with their own, as we would say, they're Mati Indian. There are black folks who have issues with black folks. There are white folks who have issues with white folks. So when it comes to racism, racism is a matter of the heart, really, because at the end of the day. Why am I not liking you? What benefit is there for me to not like you? What benefit is there for me to hate you? So at the end of the day, you will have these challenges because one thing or the other will polarize us. Some think it is religion that polarizes us. Some things is politics that polarize us. Some things it's ethnicity that polarizes us. But there are different things that polarize us, because you have Africans who are married to Indian, African men married to Indian women, and Indian women married to African men, and vice versa. And you have, the interchanging of peoples, because boy see girl, boy fall in love with girl. It's only until somebody say, hey, she black, and you say, oh yeah, I didn't know that, because that's not what attracted me to her. On the other hand, it could very well be that, because as you know, once you go black, you never go back.
I like that. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the issue, Claremont, that we are all running away from is that the heart of man, and that's the point I made to the person. In the final analysis, the heart of man is desperately wicked. It has nothing to do with the color of his skin. We may use that as a ruse, but in the final analysis, it's the heart of the matter. Because you put 10 black children and 10 white children together to play, and they will fight, and then we'll make a back. They will scream and holler at each other, and as soon as they're finished screaming and hollering, it's like if nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
And then you put those same 10 individuals who played and had fun as children in a room as adults.
Completely different.
And then you see all kinds of prejudices, and
Yeah.
you see all kinds of biases,
Yeah.
and all kinds of madness coming to the fore, you know. And so these things are things we choose to do. I choose to whether if I want to associate with you. Now, if I know you, I know you are detrimental to my health, I'll stay far from you. As we would say, I would feed you with a long spoon, or won't touch you with a 10-foot pole. But if I'm walking down the road and I see any member or any Guyanese of any ethnic group in need of help, and it's a help that I could offer. Just recently, I met. I was going to take a guy that's working at home down to town, and while we were going out, there was this Indian lady who was coming up the road with a 5-gallon bottle of water, and she was going about 300-400 yards away from where I met her. I knew her. She is a part of the community, and I know that would be an arduous thing for her to do. She would have eventually gotten home because she would, fetch it a little and put it down, fetch it a little. But I stopped, took the bottle of water, put it on my bike, take it to her home, and leave it out on her bridge, and I went about my business. If it was a black woman, it would have made a difference. If it was a white woman, it would not have made a difference. The fact of the matter, it was a woman, and she could have been any one of my aunts, of whom I have very few. She could have been any one of my sisters, of whom I have a lot. She could have been a cousin, or she could have been related to me in some form or fashion. And just like how I would have done it for her, for them, I did it for her because it was the right thing to do. Now, she may not like me. She may never come to my church. She may never give me a pound of flour or 2 spoons of sugar, but that was beside the point. At the moment, what she was doing was arduous to her, and I could have helped, and so I helped. I didn't help because I wanted her to like me. I didn't help because I wanted, to have one leg up on her, or as the case might be. I helped because she was in need of help. And so, and that's for the most part, because you go to the market, for example, and the stalls are side by side.
Yeah.
With Africans and Indians and other and Chinese and what have you, you go to the supermarket, it's the same thing. You go to catch a bus and it's the same thing. You go to catch a taxi. You go to the cricket ground and the stadium is filled to capacity. Who do you think is there? Side by side. Guyanese are there, and if they're drinking alcohol and one run out of ice, he could easily stretch his cup over to the other guy and get ice again. The issue wouldn't be what color is his skin. The issue would be we're drinking and we need ice, and I have ice and he doesn't. Here is ice, and then we leave the stadium, and those two same individuals, the Indian who just gave the black guy ice, goes that way, and the other one goes that way, and never again the twain shall meet.
What's sad about this whole thing, though? What's sad about this thing? This entire thing. What is sad about this is that at the end of the day, when you look at it, they'll go their separate ways, join their own group per se, whether it's what ethnic group they're in, and because there's some in one of the groups who's saying, man, you've been hanging out with him, all of a sudden this heart desperately wicked heart ignites, and before you know it, there's this
Yes.
the war comes up. And
Yeah.
I remember watching
Yeah.
there's a movie that we're showing on our TV channel right now. I think it's called Freedom, and one of a thing they call one group is from the Crow, black folk, but two, like how they had the Hutsis and the Tutsis, right? And they had an
Right.
enmity between each other, and the one guy knew that, man, I find it hard for you to just shoot the guy just because he is while he's with the others, and he's not doing you any harm. So he kind of make a kind of an excuse as why not to have the brother killed, right? And it's kind of like that. It shows you the heart of man, how we think. And I remember my mom, when I was growing up, we had a neighbor that you know, as you know, it said the neighbor, she always fast in people's business. She's always fast in people's business. And my
Nosy.
Mom,
North Americans would say
nosy, yeah. But my mom never spoke to her per se, because she's a confusionist. She likes to cause confusion among neighbors and people in the neighborhood and that kind of stuff. My mom didn't talk to her very much. But I remember one day, you know, she came by and she saw my mom, and she said, Mrs. Humphrey, I know you don't talk to me, but can you help me out? And my mom says, what do you need? And she's pretty much begging for essentials for her home. She was hungry. She didn't have like certain food items or whatever. And my mom sent me up to go get the food items and bring it and give it to her. And we gave it to her, and she went her way. And I'm thinking, oh, now mom is going to be talking to her. No, she needed help. That was it. You know, and we fail to realize nobody's asking you to become but recognize the humanity in somebody else, and don't treat them the way they do. Actually, the scripture that I chose this morning from Proverbs chapter 24:17, I need to talk about that. Don't gloat over your enemy's downfall, because God is going to put a halt to it and say, hold on a minute, this is not the way you're supposed to be. And so often we as human beings, and make it worse, we the so-called believers or Christians, we are good at that. We are good at gloating at other people's demise, and we shouldn't be like that. Unfortunately, the human nature kicks in. The heart of the part the Bible talks, the heart is desperately wicked, who can know it, kicks in before you know it. We become what we're not supposed to be. While I'm at that, I want to say good morning to Anita, watching out of the Philippines. Thank you so much for watching us this morning. Thank you so much for being a part of our audience, for checking us out. And Anita, she's a faithful one. She follows all of our different broadcasts on SPRLiveFM.com. So thank you so much for and it's nighttime for them too. It's about approximately 9:36 in the PM for them. Yeah, so they're 12 hours ahead of us at this time. So thank you so much for watching. Yes. As we are talking about the things of the matters of the heart, so to speak, and things that people are doing, and what Guyana is like, I remember growing up in Guyana and having friends that were of Indian descent, and I remember as a little child growing up, and it just didn't register with me, so to speak, that the reason that this child was moved from the school, I thought she had, we used to say she'd gone away, she'd probably gone to foreign or something like that, but no, the parents moved her because her and I were friends, and the parents didn't want her to become too attached to me, for the sake that they may think as she gets into her teens that she may have a black boyfriend, because she's already set aside to be married to somebody else. So they didn't want that contamination. So they moved her. And I found this out purely by accident when, as you're growing up, and I met the brother. So, and I saw her in the market. I'm like, oh, I thought you went away. She said, no, my dad didn't want me to get too close to you. I'm thinking, what do you mean? And, you're young, you're not thinking about boyfriend, girlfriend. Like, what do you mean? And it's not until I got older I understood what was actually happening. Now, I grew up in a home where my mom is part Amerindian, part black. I think she have a little bit of Indian somewhere along the line. So to us, it was never a discussion of ethnicity, because my mom is a mixture, right? And I grew up that way. What I don't like as I said, if somebody come to me with any form of racism, I should respond, but in most cases I have a reaction because it's very upsetting sometimes. Like, how can you look at me and judge me based on my skin color as opposed to the content of my mind and my heart? But you just look at me because I look with locks and everything else. Oh my gosh, he must be a druggie, he must be a thief, black men, with that kind of stuff, blah 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 blah, and the whole 9 yards. And you get this, but I personally want to believe at this time during this pandemic, it is showing a different face. Certain parts of this country, Canada, I don't know about Guyana, but I know certain parts of this country, you see where the camaraderie of people realizing that no matter what color skin you have, man, we all get hit by the same thing called COVID-19, and everybody's affected by it. Everybody has to wear a mask. Everybody has to do whatever the case may be. We all find ourselves in the same bucket called human beings. And that changed a little bit. I don't know how much, because we still have the many Karens around. I don't know if you know what the Karens mean. Do you know what the Karens mean? No?
No,
Okay.
but perhaps not the term.
The term Karen mean,
I
you know,
think we
those
use- we
those
use another-
those privileged white women who feel that they have a right to demand certain things. Like it started with the Karen. I think this one woman accused some
Oh,
black
you mean
man.
Karen?
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah.
Oh,
Karen,
okay.
right,
Yeah.
Karen. Yes, I got it.
When you say Karen, it sounds like you're saying Karen as in carrying crow.
No, Karen. Okay, I got you. Karen, yeah. And they call these privileged white women who behave
Yeah.
some way. We have a few of them around the place, but I mean, there's despite the point. The thing is, though, is that I could see a change in the future, because there's a lot of intermixture of couples these days, and it is happening. It's not over, but it's happening a lot. And I think to some people it's scary, to others like, wow, finally we come together as human beings. But hey, nations against nations, the Bible to talk about that.
Well, as you know, we have just changed government, so now we have a predominantly, even if it's only by perception, a predominantly Indian government. So you will find that now that we have an Indian government, the attitude of the Indian population of Guyana is what I call a inferiority complex.
Mm-hmm.
Because as far as they're concerned, now they're in charge. They're the ones who are calling the shots, so to speak. So everybody else must bow down. Everybody else must be subjugated to their whims and fancies. So we have that dynamic as an underlying current that is moving back and forth, in and out, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the psyche of the nation, where you have, for the most part, the Indian population is the merchant class, if you will. And so they are more prone to be the Karens, if you will, of Guyana. In that they may not call the police, but they have the same attitude and the same mentality that somehow, and the lighter skin they are. As I was sharing early on, even within their grouping, depending on the pigmentation of their skin, they have, if you will, as we all know, it's common knowledge, a caste system,
Right.
where even amongst themselves, there are those who know their place is here, and then there are those who know their place is here. Basically, for the most part, on the not the color, not the content of their character, but the color of the skin.
Wow.
So you would find that those who those who are worse yet, if they have a little bit of education, if they, if they're a lawyer or a doctor, I mean, the problem is compound because, again, you can't get higher and than a doctor or lawyer. But at the end of the day, it does not matter how educated you are. Um, if you're a doctor, you need a mechanic.
Yep.
If
Very
you
true.
are a lawyer, you need a carpenter or someone to fix something that is broken. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what station you are. You know, we need the garbage collector. We need the man or the woman who is working in sanitation to choose that job, because if he doesn't, it would be our environment that is stinking, because there would be no one to pick up our refuge or garbage. So at the end of the day, only last night my wife and I are talking about, because she's connected to a security service, and she was making the point how often we go into a place and we see a security guard, and we have a perception of that security guard. That person may be far more educated than the person who's talking down to him. But we go to a place, we see a security guard, and automatically we see a delivery driver comes to our home to deliver a package, and automatically we think he's stupid, or he's minimal in his understanding, but he might be the wisest guy in the block, more wiser than you and all your family put together. So at the end of the day, we can't allow perception or what we were told about, yeah, they're wicked in every ethnic group. They're good in every ethnic group, and so I can't for pick up, as it were, fire rage
Mm-hmm.
and say, well, it happened because this one do it, this one is just like him. No, not until I've experienced that can I say, well, this guy is the same. And even if I find my experience has been 2, 3, or 4 persons of one ethnic group has been the same, it doesn't mean that the 5th person is the same, or the 10th person is the same, or it might be a female. It doesn't mean the males are the same. Of course, it will allow me to be a little bit more cautious, but at the end of the day, you know, once I find out that there's not, then I should let down my guard, because I may be losing out on substantial experiences by just putting up those walls because somebody said, or I read somewhere, or the perception is, or that this person of this group is this or that or the other, and without first having to experience them.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I saw a guy post something on Facebook yesterday, and he took a picture with this guy. This was an African guy with an Indian guy, and he was highlighting the fact that this Indian guy, who was living on the streets, it was raining yesterday, it was pouring rain, and in the city, we have flash floods in the city. It rained some areas because, again, we are on the sea level, and due to neglect, it's in some cases, if not a lot of the cases, the water from that falls, it rises very quickly. And so he says he passed somewhere on a corner and it was flooded, and he saw this homeless guy who was living on the streets was clearing out the path, a path for the water to go to run off, because this guy who was living on the street saw that when the vehicles were passing, it made it difficult for the people who had to walk out of their way into the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took it upon himself. Now he's homeless, right? And he took it upon himself to clear a drain or a path for the water to run off of where it was, so that people who had homes, people who had everything life had to offer, perhaps some who didn't too, but here was this homeless guy who was doing this for people he didn't know, people who didn't care anything about him, people who saw him as destitute or homeless or what have you because of whatever the circumstances was that caused him to reach where he is. But the point is, and he explained what the circumstances was surrounding why he ended up as a homeless person. But at the end of the day, he might have been homeless, but he's still rational. He's still intelligent. He's still, cognizant of the need to help people in need. And he saw, because he didn't have on a nice shoes or a nice pants or a nice shirt or a tie and he didn't see that as something to prevent him from helping the situation. So the point is, people are people wherever you go. A man might be living on the street, but that don't mean that is his first choice or that is his desire. It doesn't mean that because he's living in the streets, he doesn't have, any compassion, or he's not intelligent, or he's not wise, or whatever the case might be. And so we have to be careful when we talk to people. For example, gas station workers, essential workers,
Right,
for the
right.
most part, are underpaid. So, you go to the cashier, you should be able to say, keep the change,
Yeah.
even though, for example, when my wife and I go, our bishop taught us this, when my wife and I go to the restaurant and the waiter comes up, we ask the waiter their names, so that when we address them, or when we communicate with them and they communicate with us, we
them
use
by name,
their
yeah.
first names.
Yeah.
So first thing, as soon as they come, says, "What is your name?" The waiter says, "I'm Paul." I say, "Okay, Paul." And from then on, every time there's an interaction, we call the person by name,
yeah.
because he's a waiter, but he's he's a father, he's a husband, he's doing a job.
Yeah.
And so I remember the first time I was going to the States, my bishop gave me a hand of 100. He gave me several $1 bills, and he said to me, keep these $1 bills so that you can tip persons. So that when we went to the hotel, I didn't have to struggle along with my suitcases. All I did was call the bellhop or what have you, have him push it or take it where we were going, and when he was finished, I give him a tip. Whenever I go to the airport, I don't pull in and out my bags. Whenever I go to the airport, I call the red cap or the whoever it is that they have there, and I put my luggage on their trolleys and let them put it in, because I want to make sure that I make a deposit into there. And I've gone to the airport and see people pull in 3-4 bags all by themselves, and they just pass 10, 12, guys with trolleys.
Right.
All it would take is a couple of dollars to give them. And so those are the kind of thing, because I want that. I prefer to give the guy who's pulling the trolley $5 to carry out the trolley, carry out my luggage, that pull it all by myself and leave one behind, and might not show up back for it. It's just the whole thing disappear because I couldn't be two places at the same time. So I say all that to say, it doesn't matter the color of our skin, it doesn't matter the station of our lives. Treat people with the dignity you want to be treated with, and it comes right back to you, really.
Amen. I want to say good morning to Nubian God King. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for locking in. As you're saying that, as we wrap up here very quickly, I worked at a hospital for 25 years, and one of our patients, what they call him, he was a bum, so to speak, and he had some issues with drugs and alcohol and so forth. But one of the things I always noticed about him, he always had a book. He was always reading a book. I mean, and I knew he had issues. Sometimes he'd come in, he looks like a little high, but he's always reading a book. So I said to him, man, you're always reading. And he laughed. He says, man, I messed up in life. I said, you did? He said, yeah, I was a professor at one of these colleges downtown. He told me the name of the college too. I'm like, really? So I asked somebody if this is the truth. They said yes, he was. But what happened? He got caught up in drugs, and that's what took him out, and damaged his kidneys. And before you know it, long story short, he's now a patient. Lost his family, lost everything, and I befriended him. I befriended him for the longest while. I befriended him. I'll talk to him and so forth. And he says, you know what? Nobody ever spent the time with me to talk to me. Nobody ever even reached out to me. He didn't have a phone. I tried to get him a phone so we can talk from time to time. He got the phone, but because he didn't really have a proper place of abode, he lost the phone. So, but every time I see him, I used to see him twice a week. He said, man, I'm so sorry, I lost the phone. I don't know. I said, that's okay. And after dialysis, we'll sit down, we'll talk for a little bit before he takes off. And then until finally, I think he missed a court date or something like that. And he couldn't walk properly because, he's older now and, this kind of stuff. But yet they were bringing him in these chains. I'm thinking, I said, come on, man, he can't run anyway. Can you not take those chains off? No, it's protocol. I'm thinking, man. But I mean, it is what it is. And I mean, the consequences were what he was going through. But yet he was still a human being. At this note, we're going to say bye-bye for now. I want to thank Pastor Colin Edghill for being with us this morning. This is the Praise Life Morning Show. Of course, my name is Clement, and
I'm Shepherd Colin Edghill. God bless you.
God bless you. And stay for the closing thought. Thank you so much for locking in. SPRLiveFM.com, home of the independent gospel, Canada's first gospel internet radio station, broadcasting to the Front City Radio and Success Radio. Have surrendered our lives to Christ. So let me take this time to remind you that if you've never surrendered your life to Christ, now is the time to do so. It is a simple and straightforward process. The Bible says in Romans 10:9-11, if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord